I found my granddaughter under a bridge with a baby that barely made a sound. For 27 years, I lived with a lie that sat at the head of my table like an honored guest. My daughter said I was the villain, then she told her own child I was dead. I believed the ache would dull with time. It didn't. It calcified, until the night a white envelope waited beneath my teapot and brought the past to a boil. The envelope was unmarked, thin as a lost breath. I didn't open it for 3 mornings. I moved it around my kitchen the way you move an old injury, carefully, pretending you don't favor it. The kettle hissed. The porch fan clicked. Cypress shadows walked across the tile. Finally, I broke the seal with the edge of my thumbnail and shook out a single photograph and a business card. The photograph showed a girl sitting cross-legged on cold concrete beneath an overpass, the murky light of late winter smearing her features to gray. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot. A hospital blanket swaddled the limp little bundle at her chest. You could tell the baby was too quiet even in a still image. There is a way healthy babies stretch their fingers, hungry for the world, annoyed to be swaddled. These tiny hands were tucked, thin, almost careful. As if the world had taught him not to require anything. On the back, written in a hand I recognized from a lifetime ago, Lila Rose. Your granddaughter. West bank of the river, Fulton Street overpass. J. The business card, Finch and Rowe locates. Missing people found. And the number. I turned the card over and then over again, as if guilt might be printed on the underside. The kettle rattled on the stove and clicked off. I didn't pour the water. I sat at my little kitchen table in the big old house by the Savannah River and let my thumb trace the seam of the photograph until the paper grew warm. My name is Evelyn Hart, and I am 76 years old. I've lived alone at Hart's Landing, the white clapboard mansion my husband restored with his own hands, for 29 of them. He died on the day our daughter Caroline emptied our emergency account and left a note that said only, "You never believed me anyway." I thought grief would be the worst of it. It wasn't. The worst of it was learning how to live in a house built for family without one. I called the number. Finch and Rowe, a young voice said, sunshine brittle at the edges. This is Evelyn Hart. Someone left your card at my home. There was a pause, a paper shuffle. Yes, ma'am. We've been trying to reach you. A man named Jody, he said he knew your husband from the carpentry shop. I know Jody, I said, and I did. He'd installed the nursery shelves himself back when I believed there would be baby books to hold. Jody had declined every check I offered and taken his payment in stew on the back porch and stories on Sunday afternoons. We found your granddaughter, Miss Hart, the woman continued carefully. She's using the name Lila Bennett. She gave birth 2 weeks ago. We've been monitoring, keeping distance until you could confirm. My daughter's child, I said, to make sure the world hadn't shifted so far I'd slid right off. Caroline's. Yes, ma'am. The mother is listed as Caroline Bennett on the birth record. No father listed. I held the phone to my ear and looked at the photograph again. The young woman's shoulders were rounded over the baby. There was a stubbornness to the way she curved her body, a fortress of skin and bone. Is the baby sick? I asked. He's quiet, the voice said. Too professional to say the word. Hungry. Where exactly? Fulton Street overpass, she repeated. On the west bank. There's a cluster there. She keeps away from the others. Well, a contact left that envelope at your home because he said you wouldn't come if we called first. He was right, I said. I would have made tea for my fear and told it to stay the night. I hung up. Then I went to the back hallway where my husband's old carpenter's bench lives now like an altar. I opened the shallow drawer where I keep his pocket watch, the one that stopped the afternoon he died, and I held it. It was heavy and unafraid in my palm, the way time is when it believes it owns you. I pressed the cool case to my lips, not a prayer, exactly, but something very close. I'm going, I told the empty room. Don't try to stop me. Hart's Landing sits on a rise where the river throws its shoulder into a bend and slows. My husband always said it was God's way of telling the water to breathe. The lawn out back is wide enough to hold a small helicopter, which is convenient because, to this day, Hart Construction keeps one perched in the carriage field like a patient dragonfly. We use it for site surveys, hurricane relief drops, and, sometimes, foolish errands dressed up as courage. I walked out onto the porch. The plank sighed the way old wood does when it's relieved to see you again. I told Ben, our pilot, to fuel up. Storm blowing north, he said, scanning the sky. Not a bad one, but messy. Messy I can handle, I said, and he gave me the look men give women who've decided already. I packed quietly, blankets, the soft blue one I'd crocheted the year Caroline promised she wanted her life to be steady, Pedialyte, formula, clean bottles, the simple things that might keep a baby's belly from collapsing on itself. I added a little knitted cap with a crooked pom-pom. My hands shook once, just once, when I slipped it into the bag. On the way to the field, I stopped at the kitchen door and pressed my palm to the cool glass. If you are there, I said to the empty noon and to my husband and to the God I have refused to confess to for nearly 3 decades, give me the right words. Or give me the strength to keep the wrong ones inside. When the helicopter lifted, the house fell away first and then the trees did, their tops breaking into soft fists. The river unrolled beside us like a ribbon that's learned to keep its secrets. Ben talked into the headset about crosswinds and flight time. I looked straight ahead and said nothing. When we crossed into the city, the neat squares of parks gave way to tangle and grit, overgrown lots, blocky shadows of old warehouses, the white spines of out-of-use billboards. Fulton Street, Ben said, tipping the nose a fraction. I can set us down in the empty lot by the storage units. 3 minutes on foot. We touched down in a clatter of blades that felt like knocking on a neighbor's door you haven't spoken to in too long. The wash of air through paper cups and leaves into a small cyclone that collapsed between my ankles as soon as the engine eased. I slung the bag over my shoulder. The ground was damp with last night's rain. The air under the overpass hung close and smelled like oil and old bread. People notice when a woman in a linen blouse walks toward them with intention, they notice more when she does it with her chin up. A man with a grocery cart watched me pass and then looked away when I looked back. A woman with a scarf tied bright at her throat gave me the small nod people offer when their dignity won't let them ask for help but their humanity won't let them ignore you. I saw the plaid blanket first, and then the shoulders I recognized from the photograph. Lila? I said. She didn't turn. The baby at her chest made a dry sound that might have been a cry if there'd been anything behind it to push. She shushed him with a thumb to his cheek, soft. The blanket had a hospital pattern. It was too clean for this place. Someone had tried to do something right. Lila, I said again, and this time my voice found the part of the air that carried. She flinched and looked over her shoulder. In that first glance I saw Caroline, my daughter, the stubborn tilt of the mouth, the way she narrowed one eye when she decided not to be impressed. Then Lila shifted, and the part that wasn't Caroline came into focus, a softness at the edges when she looked at the baby. Caroline never had that. Who are you? She asked. Not afraid. Not welcoming. A locked porch light. Evelyn Hart, I said, stopping a respectful 2 steps away, so she could choose whether this was a conversation or a warning. I live near the bend in the river. She looked me up and down, her eyes flicking to the helicopter beyond the chain link like it might bite. Congratulations. I brought supplies, I said, and eased the bag to the concrete near her feet. Formula. Bottles. A clean onesie. A blanket. I don't want anything from you. You came out of the sky, she said flatly. That usually means someone wants something. The baby made that dry sound again, a winded sigh. Lila adjusted him, and the blanket slipped just enough for me to see the sharp little bird cage under his skin. There is a line between telling a young mother what to do and offering what her baby needs as if both of you will die if you don't. I tried to stand on the right side of it. He's hungry, I said softly. We were at the clinic yesterday, she said. They said he was small. Small and hungry, I said, and my voice broke a little. I crouched, knees protesting, palms open. May I show you how to mix the formula? It can be hard at first if you didn't, if no one showed you. And you're who again? Her chin lifted another fraction. Because my mother told me my grandmother was dead. The sentence did what it meant to do, it landed like a rock. I sat with it for a beat. There are truths you blurt because your blood is hot, and there are truths you lay gently because you want them to live. Your mother was wrong, I said. Or she was lying. My name is Evelyn Hart. I am your grandmother. Lila's mouth went thin. Funny, she said. If that were true, I figure I would have heard from you sometime before now. You would have, I said. If I'd known you were breathing under the same sky. The baby licked at his lip, slow. The sound he made was smaller than any cry I'd ever heard. I don't remember choosing to move, I was closer, and I had the bottle in my hand. Lila's hand shot up, not to slap it away, not to clutch the baby, but to steady herself on the idea that help might be real. I unscrewed the cap, showed her the marks on the side, measured with her watching. What's his name? I asked. She hesitated. Names are power, you don't hand them to strangers. Micah, she said finally, and something inside me loosened. My husband once said if we ever had a grandson, he wanted him to have a name that meant who is like God. The universe doesn't take requests, but sometimes it gives you the joke anyway. That's a good name, I said. Let's feed Micah. I passed her the bottle. Lila's hands trembled and then stilled when the baby rooted at the rubber. He latched imperfectly, then properly, then drank the way dry grass drinks a first storm. Relief rushed his small face, and with it came a tiny sound, half cough, half complaint, that made Lila close her eyes in gratitude or desperation or both. We sat together in the dim shape of the bridge. Cars thundered above our heads like a second weather. Lila kept Micah cradled into herself like a secret she was willing to share for as long as it took to keep him on Earth. I watched the way her shoulders eased almost imperceptibly with each swallow. Why did my mother lie? She asked without looking at me. Because she learned to defend herself by setting fire to anyone who tried to hold her. Because shame eats truth and looks for dessert. Because I let my pride snap shut like a trap and called it a boundary when it was really fear. I didn't say any of those. I don't know all of it, I said. I know I made mistakes. I know your mother made choices. I know I should have found you sooner. I am sorry for all the time between then and now. She glanced up at me. The look said, you can be sorry later. Right now, can you be useful? It is the most honest look I have ever been given. I have a helicopter, I said, and her eyebrows shot up like, no kidding. It's loud, but it's warm. There's a guest room at my place and a small clinic 5 minutes away that will see Micah first. A pediatrician I trust will meet us there. You can stay as long as you like or not at all. You can walk out tomorrow if you hate the light in my kitchen. There are locks on the guest room door. If you come with me, you keep your choices. I'm not here to take them. Lila shifted Micah and studied me the way you study a label on a jar that claims it won't stain. People who have helicopters usually have strings sewn into everything. Strings are for kites, I said, and she snorted despite herself. This is a ride. That's all. A ride and some food and a doctor who will not tell you to come back when he is less busy. What do you want in return? She asked. To know you, I said, the truth a clean taste in my mouth for the first time in years. To give you a door to shut against the weather. If you don't want my name, you don't have to take it. If you want it later, I'll be here. Micah's hand opened on the blanket, a starfish in the half-dark. His cheeks already looked less like drawn paper. Lila looked down at him, then back at the chain-link fence, then to the old man with the grocery cart who had very carefully faced the other way so as not to witness another woman's pleading. 1 hour, she said at last. We go to your house. He eats. The doctor looks him over. Then we talk. If I smell anything weird, if anyone asks me to sign anything, I walk. Agreed, I said. No paperwork. No tricks. Shoes if you need them. Rest if you want it. She stood slowly, the slow careful way of a woman who hasn't been offered gentleness for a while and is testing the floorboards. Her coat was thin. Her jeans were damp at the knees. She adjusted Micah's cap and then followed me toward the fence, past the helicopter that crouched like a question mark. Ben lowered the ladder and pretended not to notice that my hands shook as I steadied her. Ever flown before? He asked casually. Only in buses, she said. That'll do, he grinned, and the corner of Lila's mouth bent like a window shade that had been stuck for months and finally slid an inch. Inside, the seats were warm. The rotor wash turned the air into a strong hand pressing against our ribs. Lila kept Micah tucked into her sweater, one palm on his back, counting more than breaths, counting future meals, counting what safety might sound like if it had a voice. Before we lifted, I did something I haven't done since my husband's funeral. I bowed my head, not enough for anyone to make a fuss about it, just enough for God to notice if he was inconvenienced and peeking. Please, I said, very quietly. Let me do more good than harm. Let me say less when less is better. We rose above the littered lot and the cold geometry of the bridge. The city unfolded beneath us in rectangles and routes, problems that could be solved with money and time and, sometimes, apology. Lila watched the ground, her jaw set the way women set their jaws when they've been disappointed spectacularly and planned not to be again. When the river came into view, a patient silver ribbon with its own old memory, she exhaled like someone who had been holding her lungs tight for days. Have you ever faced something like this for someone you love? I asked softly, not to her but to the women who find me wherever I speak and press their stories into my palms like fragile coins. If this story touches a place you keep quiet, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so more grandmothers with stubborn love can find us, and find a way forward. Micah stirred and made a sound that wasn't a cry and wasn't a sigh but something exactly in between, like a hinge oiled for the first time. Lila looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the question frames itself behind her eyes. My mother, she said over the engine's thrum. If you're really my grandmother, then you know. You know what she did. You know why we're here. Her voice didn't shake. It was tired, and it was done being lied to. Tell me, Evelyn. Tell me the part nobody ever told me. I gripped the strap above my head as the helicopter banked toward the bend where my house waited with its porch light off and its doors unlocked. There are truths you can tell on the ground that turn to dust in the air. There are others that can only be said while the earth is small and the sky is very, very large. I'll tell you, I said. When we land. The river flared bright beneath us like a blade-catching sun. When the helicopter settled on the grass behind Hart's Landing, the blades chopped the air into something that felt almost visible. Lila kept one palm over Micah's back and watched the house the way you watch a stranger who has learned your name before you offered it. The back porch light wasn't on. I never leave it on in daylight. The porch steps were painted the color of rainwater and smooth from use, the handrail polished by 1,000 comings and goings that never felt quite mine after my husband died. I saw the house through Lila's eyes for a second, too big, too white, too sure of itself. Inside first, I said over the thinning roar, and Ben lifted the bag while I helped Lila to the grass. She flinched when her feet met the ground, as if the earth might not hold this new fact either. Kitchen, I said, and I opened the screen door. Kitchens will tell you if a house means it. Mine is square and bright, with cabinets my husband built when his hands were still steady. There's a bruise-colored hutch in the corner that I found at a yard sale in '83 and swore I'd paint but never did. The table is scarred from meals and homework, from a birthday cake that fell in the middle and a holiday where no one came. Sit, I said, and set the bag near the sink. Lila didn't, she hovered, her body both barrier and bridge over Micah, her eyes already looking for exits, for paperwork, for the catch. There's no catch, I said softly, knowing it sounded exactly like the kind of thing someone would say if there were. The pediatrician will meet us at the clinic. 10 minutes away. I want you to choose the chair you like, not the one you feel assigned. She blinked at that and slid into the chair that faced the door. I set water to boil and washed my hands the way nurses do, fingers, thumbs, wrists, because when you've got nothing else to offer, you can at least offer cleanliness. I warmed a bottle under the tap, felt the weight like a good promise, and handed it to her. Micah's mouth fumbled and then latched with more certainty than he had under the bridge. Some color pulled in along his cheeks. His hand uncurled a little, like a small fern in a new room. Lila stared at the bottle like it might vanish if she blinked too long. I didn't know how to make it right, she said to the plastic, which was a mercy because the plastic was kinder than most people. They said breast is best. They said a lot of things. They do, I said. I poured weak tea because her hands were shaking, and I've learned that strong tea is for the sure-footed. People say a lot of things. Most of them don't stay for midnight feedings. She pressed her mouth to Micah's hair. It smelled like the clinic blanket and the metal of the bridge, like new coin and rain. We'll head to the clinic when he finishes, I said. No waiting room, if I can help it. The doctor there, Dr. Patel, she's good the way old trees are good. You pay her? Lila asked, practical. Yes, I said. And no one will ask you for anything at the desk. The flush in her cheeks eased by a degree. I can work, she said quickly, as if the house might revoke itself if she didn't offer. I can clean. You can rest, I said. And later, you can choose. Choice first. Work later. Not the other way around. Micah's swallow slowed, his lashes fluttered, tired from the effort of taking in the world properly. Lila eased the bottle away and patted his back with a seriousness that made me swallow hard. There's a photograph on my fridge of my husband standing beside a boat he never finished restoring. He has sawdust in his hair and good trouble in his eyes. A magnet holds a grocery list beneath his smile: milk, onions, flour, mercy. I added the last one myself the day Caroline left. Are you religious? Lila asked suddenly, as if the kitchen had turned into a confessional and she wanted to spot the exits for that too. I used to talk a lot, I said. To God. To my husband. To myself. Then I stopped. Lately I've been trying to learn how to say fewer words with more truth inside them. What do you call that? She asked. Practice, I said, and she released a breath that might have been a laugh if it didn't have so much weight in it. We wrapped Micah in the blue blanket I'd packed and tucked the crooked palm cap over his ears. The cap made his face look smaller, then larger, the way correct proportions can do both. Lila stood, as if testing gravity, and followed me out to the truck. I don't drive the big SUV that sits in the front circle like a question mark. I drive a 10-year-old pickup with a bench seat and a dent in the door from when I misjudged the barn by 2 inches. Seatbelts, I said, and waited. It took us 2 tries to figure out how the infant seat worked with the straps we had, and in that fumbling there was something almost like normal life, cursing softly at buckles, rearranging the blanket 3 times because it never feels good enough, arguing with the idea of safety until it gives in. The clinic was painted the color of hope someone bought on sale and couldn't return. A boy with a broken skateboard sat out front, counting the lines on the sidewalk like pennants. Inside, the air smelled of disinfectant and orange. Dr. Patel met us at the door in sneakers and a cardigan with a snag near the pocket. Her hair was pulled back and her eyes were the tired kind that tell you she's been watching over too many people for too long and will continue anyway. Evelyn, she said, and pressed my fingers in hers. And you must be Lila. She didn't add I'm glad you came, she put it in her tone instead. The exam room was small, the light honest. Lila kept 2 fingertips on Micah's shoulder while Dr. Patel weighed him, measured him, listened to the tiny percussion of his chest. Not feverish, Dr. Patel said. No signs of infection. But he's underweight and a little dehydrated. We'll do a small fluid supplement here, a careful one, and set a feeding schedule for the next few days. You're not failing him. He's small because he hasn't had enough, not because of anything wrong with him. Lila's jaw set at the word failing and then loosened at not like a not learning its alphabet. I can show you formula prep that's gentler on his belly, Dr. Patel continued, moving with an economy that felt like respect. And I'd like to check you too, Lila. Birth 2 weeks ago. Any bleeding beyond normal? Any pain that worries you? Lila blinked, unmoored by the idea that she still existed as a body worthy of attention separate from the baby. I'm fine, she said automatically, then winced when she shifted in the chair. Mostly. We'll take mostly, Dr. Patel said. We'll make mostly into better. They moved like a small team, doctor, young mother, old grandmother. Micah accepted the supplement through a narrow tube like a truce, then burrowed into the crook of Lila's elbow and slept with a seriousness that felt like prayer answered in small currency. Dr. Patel ran through care notes and wrote them by hand on a yellow sheet because the printer was sulking. She drew little boxes for check marks and handed Lila a pen. You don't have to fill them to earn anything, she said, tapping the boxes. They're so you can see what you're already doing. We left with a paper bag of formula and a schedule that included naps and food and a reminder to look out a window twice a day on purpose. Back at the house, I parked where the pecan tree throws a particular kind of shade in late afternoon. The air held the hush that comes when the river is in a generous mood. Guest room? I asked. Guest room, Lila said, as if testing the word for splinters. I showed her the small room at the back of the house with the good light and the quiet. The bedspread was old but clean, the window screen mended carefully with thread so fine you could only see the fix if you knew where to look. A bassinet waited near the dresser like it hoped not to be presumptuous. On the nightstand, a lamp, a glass of water with condensation, a ring of honest proof, and a note that said welcome, whoever you are, in my spikiest, least fancy handwriting. I hadn't written Lila because I didn't want to scare the welcome off. There's a lock, I said, and pointed. From the inside. And if anyone ever forgets to knock, the door slaps their hand for them. It's an old house trick. She traced the lock with her eyes, not her fingers, and nodded once. I can sleep sitting up, she said, already negotiating with her own past care. I'm used to the bed, I said. Try it. If you hate it, we'll find you a chair to fight. She smiled, small and sideways. I've fought chairs before. I can tell, I said. I made soup because you cannot fix a life with it, but you can start. Onion, carrot, the last of the chicken pulled from bone, pepper heavy enough to remind the tongue it is attached to a brave person. I baked biscuits the way my mother taught me, not measuring the flour because grief had already made me precise where I didn't need to be. Lila sat in the kitchen with Micah asleep on her chest and watched me move. Watching is a kind of trust when you've lived outside for a while. She borrowed my phone to text a number that didn't ping back. She set the phone face down on the table like a closed door and didn't ask to use it again. Do you know why she told me you were dead? She asked finally, either because the soup smelled like the kind of honesty you can't run from or because the quiet had stretched to the point where the truth's back began to ache. My mother. There are stories you rehearse and then there are the ones you live in silence and hope rot into compost. Caroline is both for me. I ladled soup and sat opposite Lila so she could see my face and decide if it was a map she wanted to read. Your mother was 17 when she decided the house was a cage, I said. She was wrong, but I can't tell you being wrong doesn't feel like being right when you're that age. She fell in with a man who promised her versions of freedom that come with ledger lines. He was older. He said pretty things with rotten ends. When your grandfather and I told her we wouldn't let him in, she said we were keeping love out. Lila's mouth quivered at love like the word had teeth. I made 2 mistakes, I said. I raised my voice, and I made a rule I couldn't enforce with tenderness. I told her she could choose our roof or his promises, and she chose him because that's what you do when someone tells you your choice is the only way to prove you are yourself. She told me, Lila said, eyes on the rim of her bowl, that you kicked her out in a church parking lot and told her never to come back. In the picture I carry in my mind, the parking lot is empty and ugly with heat. In the picture I carry, I am holding the car door and asking her to get in, and she is walking away with a backpack that wasn't big enough for a life, and I'm telling her she can come home if she wants oxygen more than fireworks. The thing about pictures is that more than one can be true depending on where you stand. I told her to come home every week for a year, I said. I called the number she used until a man answered and laughed. Then your grandfather died and I went very quiet for a very long time. By then, your mother had learned how to live with her story better than she could live with mine. She said you took money from her, Lila said, testing me like a fence. I took the car keys, I said. Because the man she was with drove drunk and angry and the car was in my name and I wanted my daughter alive more than I wanted her forgiveness. I would take those keys again. Lila nodded once, a hard little nod that meant she could hold both versions in her hands without dropping either yet. There is something else, I said, because the truth multiplies if you feed it. She put my name on a restraining order that was never filed. She told people I hit her. I did not. I slammed a drawer and scared myself. I broke a plate on purpose so I wouldn't break her trust. I yelled so loud the dog hid. I did not hit her. She carried the order in her wallet, Lila whispered, like she could see the floral print of it just then. She used it to explain a lot of things. I know, I said, and grief ran its hand down my spine like a familiar. I found out later. I chose not to chase it because chasing it would have been like throwing gasoline on gossip and asking it to be nicer about the flames. We ate soup. The biscuits disappeared without us noticing we were the ones who had made them vanish. Micah snuffled and slept. The house relaxed around us in increments. When the dishes were in the sink and the kettle had decided to perform again, Lila said, "Then there's my father." It was not a question, it was a stage direction. I don't know his name, she continued when I stayed quiet a respectable beat. She wouldn't tell me. She told me he was mean or married or both. She told me I was better off unclaimed. Anger does a peculiar thing when you're my age, it puts on a suit and sits very still. Your grandfather and I never learned his name either, I said. We asked. She said he was no one and nothing. When she left with the man who promised her oceans, so we assumed he had written over whatever was or wasn't before. Lila's eyes sharpened. But you said there was something else. There is, I said, and I went to the old carpenter's bench in the hallway and opened the drawer with the watch and the parts of my heart I don't keep on display. I took out an envelope that had been sealed for 27 years. This was addressed to Caroline, when you're ready, from your father. It arrived the week she left. I tried to give it to her, she wouldn't take it. I kept it because I am a coward and because I couldn't decide if I was saving her from a hurt or keeping her from a healing. Lila stared at the envelope as if it might bite. You never opened it? No, I said. I told myself it wasn't mine to read. And now, she asked. Now it might be yours, I said. If you want it. Her fingers hovered, then dropped. Not yet, she said, and I respected a young woman who knows the weight of a sealed thing. What else? I hesitated long enough to be honest about my hesitation. When Finch and Rowe found you, I said, they also found a record, an old birth certificate correction request with your mother's name on it. It was never processed. The father's line was left blank, but the clerk's note said, possible father, M. Reeves, declined to be listed. The name means nothing to me. It might mean everything to you. Lila's face changed shape without moving. She touched the corner of Micah's cap as if the knit held a map. Reeves, she repeated, tasting it, not spitting it out, not swallowing it yet either. There's a Reeves who fixes boat motors near the docks. There's a Reeves who sings in the second pew and doesn't miss a note. There's a Reeves who sells bait and cigarettes like both are sacraments. She looked up. Do you know which? No, I said. And I will not call him unless you ask me to. Good. The word didn't leave her mouth, but it sat on her shoulder like a small, satisfied sparrow. Micah stirred, new hunger ticking in him like a clock that had remembered its job. Lila adjusted him with all the awkward grace of someone who learned a hard thing before lunch and agreed to learn another by dinner. I rose to make another bottle, and the kettle chose that moment to scream softly the way some kettles do when they've been patient and want points for it. The doorbell rang. It is a humble sound in my house, because my husband disconnected the chime from the parlor years ago when Caroline practiced piano for hours at a time and everything rang anyway. It's one tone, like a spoon tapped lightly against a jar. Lila's eyes flicked to the lock and then to me. You expecting someone? No, I said. The doorbell rang again, once, the same polite note. I wiped my hands on a towel and crossed the floor. My bones had learned a very particular tempo for this walk in the years after my husband's heart stopped, steady in the hall, considerate at the threshold, braced at the knob. I opened the door. A man stood on my porch with a cap in his hand and river wind in his jacket. He was near my daughter's age now, with a face that had been weathered by sun and work rather than worry. His eyes were a color that would be hard to name if you were asked under oath. He cleared his throat the way men do when they have practiced the first sentence and none of the ones after. Mrs. Hart, he said. Name's Mark Reeves. I'm not sure if I'm late or early, but I believe I'm at the right door. Behind me, Lila's spoon slipped against the bowl and made a bright, betraying sound. The man on my porch, Mark Reeves, stood like someone who expected to be told to leave before he finished his name. His hands were thick with work, his nails dark with oil. He held his cap as if it were the last barrier between him and the weight of what he'd come to say. I believe, he said again, that Lila is my daughter. The words cracked the air in half. Behind me, I felt Lila stiffen. She didn't speak. She held Micah tighter, her arms folded into a cradle so fierce it looked like armor. I didn't invite him in. Not yet. This is not the place, I said, and nodded toward the oak tree at the edge of the yard. He hesitated, then followed me down the steps. The boards creaked, old allies unwilling to disguise tension. You'd best leave, Lila's voice called from the kitchen doorway. Her tone wasn't angry, it was exhausted, worn down to the wire. You waited 17 years. You can wait longer. Mark's shoulders twitched at her words, but he didn't turn. He looked at me instead. She's right to be angry. I was a coward. I was 22, and her mother told me she'd handle it. I believed her because it was easier than believing I had a child. I told myself I'd come back. I didn't. I've got no excuse, Mrs. Hart. Just a fact. That girl is mine. The oak tree gave us shade, but not enough cover for a confession this heavy. It's not mine to grant or deny, I said. If she wants you in her story, she'll tell you. He nodded, rough. I just needed her to know I wasn't dead, that's all. Even if she never speaks to me again. When I returned inside, Lila had vanished into the guest room. The door was shut. I let it be. Some truths are better digested in the quiet. Night fell in the way only southern nights do, fast and total, the stars scattering like marbles on dark cloth. The house smelled of soup and biscuits still lingering, layered with something new, baby powder and warm skin. I set a clean nightgown on the foot of the guest bed and left a towel on the bathroom hook. From the hallway I heard water running. A bath. The sound was ordinary, but it struck me like music. A young woman washing the grit of a bridge from her body, a baby swaddled in a real bassinet, not a hospital blanket on concrete, that was music. When she emerged later, her hair was damp and her cheeks flushed from steam. Micah slept in the bassinet, his tiny lips twitching in some secret dream. She looked at me uncertainly, as though afraid gratitude might be a kind of weakness. Thank you, she said finally. 2 words, rough-edged, but enough. You don't owe me thanks, I said. You owe yourself sleep. I'll sit with him a while if you like. Her eyes narrowed. You'll stay here? Watch him? Yes, I said. So you can rest without one ear open. She hesitated, then nodded. The bed creaked as she slid under the quilt. Within minutes, her breathing evened. Exhaustion is a thief, but sometimes it steals you back from fear. I sat in the rocking chair beside the bassinet. My husband had built this chair before Caroline was born. I had planned to rock my grandchildren in it. For decades it sat empty, a relic of intention. Tonight, at last, it carried weight again. Micah stirred once, and I hummed without thinking, a low tune my husband used to whistle while sharpening his tools. Micah's fingers curled around the edge of his blanket, and his chest rose with the rhythm of trust. For the first time in 30 years, my house felt less like a museum and more like a home. At dawn, I made coffee and stepped onto the porch. The air smelled of river mud and magnolia. The porch swing moved gently in the breeze. I set my mug on the rail and bowed my head. I didn't pray long. Only one sentence. If you're still listening, help me not to ruin this. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't the kind of prayer that makes it into hymnals. But it was mine. And it was honest. When I lifted my head, Mark Reeves was there. He stood at the bottom of the porch steps, hat in hand again, like a boy who couldn't quite manage to grow into his own shadow. "You're persistent," I said. He nodded. "She won't talk to me, I get that. But I'd like to speak to you, if you'll allow it." I considered the weight of it. My first instinct was to send him away, to slam the door on more complications. But then I thought of Micah, of Lila's tired eyes. Secrets rot faster than food in the sun. Better to air them where someone can choose whether to keep them. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the porch steps. "But keep your voice low. The baby's sleeping." He obeyed. For a long time he didn't speak. Just twisted the brim of his hat in his hands. Finally he said, "Caroline told me she lost the baby." That was the last I heard. I left town after that. I've had 17 years to wonder if I made the biggest mistake of my life. "You did," I said plainly. "But regret doesn't feed a child. Action does." His jaw tightened. "I want to help. Money, work, anything. I don't expect her to call me father. I don't deserve it. But I can't let my grandson grow up under bridges while I fix boats for other people." Grandson. The word trembled in the air like a fragile bird. "You should understand," I said carefully, "that what you want matters less than what Lila chooses. If she says no, you step back." He nodded, eyes dark with something older than himself. "I'll step back. But I won't disappear again, Mrs. Hart. I'll stand where she can see me. Even if it's from across the street." Something in me softened, against my better judgment. "We'll see," I said, and rose before I could promise more. By mid-morning, Lila was awake, pale but steadier. She fed Micah with practiced patience, as though the act of nourishment was teaching her how to stay upright. I made pancakes, because flour and sugar are a language nearly anyone understands. She ate slowly at first, then faster, until her fork scraped the plate. She flushed and looked away, embarrassed. "You eat like someone who hasn't been given permission in a long time," I said gently. "I eat like someone who hasn't eaten," she replied flatly, but there was no shame in it, only fact. After breakfast, we sat on the porch swing. Micah lay across Lila's lap, his breath soft and regular. The sunlight caught the gold threads in her hair, threads she didn't know she had. "Why do you care now?" she asked suddenly. "You had years. I was alive this whole time." Her words landed like stones in my lap. I picked them up carefully. "I didn't know you existed until that photograph," I said. "And when I learned, I came. Late, yes. Too late in many ways. But I'm here now, and I intend to stay." She studied my face, looking for cracks. "My mother always said you'd rather have a company than a family." I swallowed hard. Your mother's pain made her say things. Some of them were true. I did bury myself in hard construction after your grandfather died. It was easier to argue with lumber than with grief. But I never stopped wanting a family. I stopped believing I'd have one. Micah stirred, his fist uncurling against Lila's shirt. She stroked his tiny knuckles with one finger. "You're saying you want us here. For good." "I'm saying I want you safe," I said. "For as long as you'll let me try." She exhaled sharply, almost a laugh. Safe is a big word. Bridges have a kind of safety too. No one expects anything from you there. Safety without dignity is a cage, I replied. You deserve better. Micah deserves better. Her eyes glistened. She blinked hard, unwilling to let tears be currency. I'll think about it, she whispered. That was more than I'd hoped for. The rest of the day moved in small mercies. Lila showered again. Micah napped in sunlight. I washed laundry I hadn't expected to wash, folded small clothes I hadn't touched in decades. The house hummed with the ordinary. Late afternoon, I brewed tea. The air shifted, still, heavy. A storm pressed against the horizon, thick with unshed rain. Thunder grumbled somewhere beyond the river. The phone rang. It wasn't the kitchen phone, the one with the cheerful jingle. It was the black rotary in the hallway, the one I kept connected out of stubbornness, the line only 3 people had ever known, my husband, my daughter, and the lawyer who handled Caroline's first disappearance. The sound froze me mid-step. I lifted the receiver slowly. Heart Residence. A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in nearly 3 decades. Thin, cracked, but unmistakable. Mother, Caroline said. You found her, didn't you? The storm broke at that exact moment, rain hammering the porch roof so hard it drowned my reply. I pressed the phone tighter. Caroline, but the line clicked. Silence. I stood there, receiver pressed to my ear, the storm rattling every window. Behind me, Lila's laughter, light, surprised, rose from the guest room, where Micah had done something newborn and miraculous. She didn't know yet. Not yet. And I was left in the hallway with a deadline in my hand and the sound of my daughter's voice lodged like a splinter in my chest. The storm lasted all night. It drummed against the roof like impatient fingers, poured down the gutters until the yard was a shallow lake, and rattled the windows in their frames. I sat awake in the rocker by the bassinet, listening to Micah's breaths between the thunder. Lila slept fitfully, twisting beneath the quilt, her brow furrowed even in dreams. At dawn, the storm broke. The yard steamed under the sudden sun, the grass glittering with 1,000 tiny mirrors. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, peaches cut into careful slices, and carried a tray to the guest room. Lila blinked awake, startled, when I set it near her. You didn't have to, she said. I did, I replied. Because you matter. She looked at me a long moment, as though waiting for the catch. When none came, she ate in silence, Micah tucked against her lap. Each bite seemed to anchor her a little more. Later that morning, Mark Reeves returned. I found him on the back steps, cap in hand again. His persistence was beginning to wear a groove in my patience, but I also saw the hollowness in his eyes, the look of a man who has lived too long with the echo of what he abandoned. Don't bring him inside, Lila's voice snapped from the porch. She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. Micah whimpered in her sling, as if picking up her tension. Mark's throat worked. I just wanted a word. One word. You had 17 years, she said, her voice sharp. You had 17 million words you could have used. You chose silence. He flinched as though she'd struck him. I was scared. Scared? She laughed bitterly. I was scared too. I was scared in a hospital bed with no one there. I was scared under a bridge feeding a baby with nothing. But I showed up. I stayed. I didn't get to choose silence. Mark's eyes glistened, but he didn't argue. He just stood, hat twisting in his hands, shame written across his face. Go, Lila said finally, her jaw tight. If you want to help, stay away. I don't need more ghosts. He hesitated, then nodded. Without another word, he walked across the yard, his shoulders stooped under the weight of absence. Lila sagged against the doorframe after he left, her breath shaky. Don't let him back here, she whispered. I put a hand lightly on her shoulder. You decide who enters your life. No one else. Her eyes softened a fraction. Then the answer is no. The day moved slower after that. Lila washed bottles in the kitchen sink while I folded laundry nearby. She hummed under her breath, tuneless, just sound, and it filled the room like sunlight after too many cloudy days. At lunch, I made chicken stew. She ate 2 bowls without apology this time. When she finished, she leaned back, exhausted but less hollow. "This house feels dangerous," she said suddenly. "Dangerous how?" I asked. "Like if I let myself believe it's safe, I'll break when it disappears." Her honesty made my chest ache. I reached across the table, resting my hand near hers but not touching. "Then let's not call it safe yet. Let's call it shelter. Shelter can be temporary or permanent. But it's real while you're in it." She nodded, accepting the compromise. That afternoon, while Micah napped, I told her the truth about the phone call. I couldn't keep it any longer. Secrets rot quickest when you hide them in kitchens. "Your mother called last night," I said quietly. Lila froze, a dish towel clutched in her hands. "What?" "On the old line." She didn't stay long. Just long enough to say, "You found her, didn't you?" Then she hung up. Lila's face went pale. Her hands trembled. "She knows." "Yes," I said. "She knows." She swallowed hard. "She'll come." "I think so," I admitted. Her eyes darkened. "I don't want her here." "She's still your mother," I said gently. "She's the woman who lied my whole life," Lila shot back. "She told me you were dead. She told me my father was no one. She left me with nothing but stories that burned when I touched them. She doesn't get to come back and act like any of that didn't happen." Her words were fire, and fire deserves respect. "Then we'll face her on your terms," I said. "Not hers." For a long moment, she just breathed. Then she whispered, "I don't trust myself to face her at all." "You won't have to alone," I promised. That evening, I suggested we walk to the church at the edge of town. It's a small brick building with peeling white trim, the kind of place that smells of hymnals and floor polish. My husband and I used to sit there on Wednesday nights, his hand warm around mine. After he died, I stopped going. The silence inside those walls was too loud. Lila hesitated, but agreed. Micah was bundled against her chest, a little cap snug over his ears. We walked slowly, the gravel crunching beneath our shoes. Inside, the sanctuary was empty, lit only by colored light through the stained glass windows. The air smelled of dust and candle wax. "Why here?" Lila asked, her voice hushed despite herself. "Because this is where I remember I don't have to be enough by myself," I said. She stared at the altar. "I don't know how to pray." "You don't need lessons," I said. "You just need honesty. God can work with that." She sat in a pew, Micah asleep against her. I sat beside her. We didn't bow or fold our hands. We just breathed. That was prayer enough. After a while, Lila whispered, "If you're real, prove it. Don't let him starve again. Don't let me screw this up." Her voice broke on the last word. I slipped my arm lightly around her shoulders. She didn't pull away. We sat in silence, the colored light falling over us like a benediction neither of us had earned but both of us needed. The creak of the church door startled us. We turned. A woman stood in the doorway, framed by the fading sunlight. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face lined, but her eyes were unmistakable. Caroline. She looked thinner than memory, her clothes worn, her expression sharp as ever. "Lila," she said, her voice slicing through the stillness. "Baby girl." "It's me." Lila stiffened, her arms tightening around Micah. Her jaw clenched. I rose slowly, every bone in my body bracing. "Caroline." Her gaze cut to me, hard, furious. "So it's true. You stole her. You took my daughter." Lila's voice shook, but it was steady enough to carry. No. You gave me away the day you lied. And now you want to come back? Why? Caroline stepped inside, her shadow spilling across the aisle. Because I'm still your mother. And I won't let her turn you against me. The storm outside had ended hours ago, but in that church, it began again. Caroline stood in the church doorway like a storm deciding whether to break. Stained glass threw blue and red across her face. She moved down the center aisle, heels ticking on wood as if counting down to a choice she'd already made. Lila, she called, voice ringing in the empty nave. Baby girl. Come with me. Lila rose with Micah tucked against her heart. The baby stirred and settled, small breath warm through the sling. Don't call me that, she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. You lost the right. Caroline's eyes cut to me and back. She's feeding you lines, she said, jerking her chin toward my pew. She'll buy you with soup and a story about mercy. You'll wake up in a prettier cage. She gave me a room with a lock on the inside, Lila answered. She told me I could leave whenever I wanted. Yesterday my son ate and kept it down. That isn't a cage. Caroline laughed, brittle as old foil. A lock's still a lock. It kept the rain out, Lila said. It kept men out who don't knock. It kept my son warm. The silence that followed had weight. Lila stepped into it. Who is he? She asked, steady. My father. Caroline's jaw worked. No one, she said at last. A mistake with a name. Which name? Lila said. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Something in Caroline's posture loosened, an old rope fraying. Mark Reeves, she said, like the words tasted wrong. He didn't want you. He walked. Lila flinched at the cruelty more than the name. She looked down at Micah's small ear, pink as a seashell. You hid him, she said. Not a question. A verdict. I protected you, Caroline snapped. From a man who wouldn't stay. From a house that eats people and calls it kindness. From the kind of forgiveness that expects payment. You protected me from beds, Lila said, gentle and unflinching. From heaters that work. From pictures of my grandfather. From knowing my own history. Caroline raised both hands, empty, pleading. We can fix it. You and me and the baby. We don't need her. Family doesn't lie until it sounds like a hymn, Lila answered. Family doesn't tell a girl her grandmother is buried when she's alive and making pancakes. I took the old envelope from my bag, Caroline, when you're ready, from your father. The paper had yellowed, the glue still held. This arrived the week you left, I said. I tried to give it to you. You refused. I kept it because I didn't know whether opening it would save you or break you. It isn't mine now, and it isn't yours. It's Lila's, if she wants it. Caroline glanced at it like a moth at a match. You held that over me for decades. I held it for you, I said. There's a difference. Lila didn't reach. She studied it the way you study medicine you aren't sure you can bear. Later, she said. I'll read it later. Good, Caroline said quickly. Later. Right now, pack. Donna owes me. We can stay with her till I line something up. I'll get work. You can sell back the formula. We'll manage like we always do. You mean like I manage while you call it we, Lila said, almost kindly. Caroline's gaze slid to Micah. What's his name? Micah. The word softened her for one breath, then she hardened again. Let me hold him. No, Lila said. Not until you remember what hands are for. Caroline's mask slipped, a girl flashed underneath. Then it said again. Fine, she said. If this is how it is, the law can listen. I'm filing for custody. He's my grandson. A judge will hear me. Lila's fingers whitened on the blanket. He's my son, she said. You don't get to borrow him to fix your story. Caroline turned, anger and triumph braided in her mouth. You always did love paper, she threw over her shoulder at me, and was gone. The door side closed like the church had seen worse and survived it. Let's go home, I said. Back at Hart's Landing, I made tea because hands need work when hearts are loud. Lila sat at the table, Micah asleep against her, the petition already forming in her eyes. She's going to take him, she whispered. She's going to take my baby. Not while I'm breathing and the law still means something here, I said. We'll meet her where she's going. We'll bring truth. Truth likes rooms with bailiffs. The front bell rang. Not the cheerful kitchen chime, the solemn note for officials and news. A deputy stood on the porch, hat damp from the last of the storm. Mrs. Hart, he said. Ma'am, emergency petition filed by a Ms. Caroline Bennett. Temporary custody and visitation determination for an infant, Micah Bennett. Hearing at 9 a.m. tomorrow. He peered past me, saw Lila, softened. Service doesn't mean anything's decided, ma'am. It means you're informed. He cleared his throat. There's also a requested temporary no-contact order against Mrs. Hart. Just a request. Judge will decide. Thank you, I said. The door closed. Paper shook in Lila's hand. Micah slept, faithfully indifferent to human law. I don't want to stand in a courtroom with her, Lila said. I don't want to tell strangers why my son learned not to cry. You'll tell them he's learning something new, I said. You'll tell them about the bridge and the bottle and how he kept it down. Dr. Patel's notes, the schedule, the checkmarks. Ben saw what he flew over. The pastor heard you not scream when you could have. We bring steadiness. Judges like steadiness. What if I lose? Then we appeal, I said. And in the space between, we don't fall down. Tires crunched on the Shell Drive. I parted the curtain. Mark Reeves climbed from his truck with a folder and a look like a man who had decided he would carry what he should have carried long ago. He stopped in the hall, respectful of a line he wouldn't cross without permission. I found a lawyer, he said. Paternity acknowledgments, legitimation. A signature won't fix 17 years, but it puts my name where it belongs. If you allow it, I'll sign tonight. If you don't, I'll still be in court to tell the judge what I didn't do and what I'm ready to do now. Lila studied him, measuring the difference between words and weight. Micah made a small sound. She kissed his hair and looked up. You sign, she said. On one condition, you don't disappear if the paper gets heavy. I won't, Mark said. I've got a spine now. I came to show it. We spread the forms on the kitchen table. His hands shook, then steadied. He signed where the tabs told him. Lila initialed where needed. It felt less like ceremony than plumbing, clear water through old pipes. I wound my husband's pocket watch and set it beside the pen. It clicked twice, a small gold metronome for truth. The black rotary phone rang. That line only rings for trouble and the past. It rang once, twice, again. I reached toward it. Lila's voice stopped me. Don't, she said. Not tonight. We let it ring until it didn't. Outside, the pecan tree shed the last bead of storm water. The kettle lifted its silver voice. Micah sighed and burrowed deeper against warmth. Lila touched the watch with one fingertip. Tomorrow, she said, looking at me, at Mark, at her son. We tell everything we can without breaking. Tomorrow, I said. Mark nodded. Tomorrow. And the house, which had been waiting years for that word to mean what it should, settled around us like a promise finally willing to keep itself. The courthouse smelled of floor wax and nerves. Lila sat beside me in the front row, Micah asleep against her chest, his little cap tilted sideways. Mark Reeves sat on her other side, his hands locked together so tightly they looked carved from wood. We waited. The judge's bench loomed above us, a plain desk in a plain room, but the air carried weight. Caroline entered last. She wore a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit, her chin raised, her eyes scanning the room like she still had the power to choose who belonged. She saw Lila, then me, then Mark, and her mouth twisted. "All rise," the bailiff called. The judge entered, robes swishing, expression calm but not unkind. "This is a hearing to consider emergency custody petition filed by Ms. Caroline Bennett. We will hear testimony from all relevant parties." Caroline went first. She painted herself as the mother who had done her best, abandoned by a man, misunderstood by her own parent, left with no resources but grit. Her voice cracked in the right places. She gestured toward Micah with a trembling hand. "That baby is my blood. He belongs with his family." The judge listened without expression, then nodded. "Thank you. Ms. Lila, please step forward." Lila stood, shoulders tight, Micah still against her chest. Her voice shook at first. "I don't have much. But I have him. I fed him under a bridge when no one else would. I stayed awake 3 nights when he coughed and burned with fever. My mother said my grandmother was dead, but when I found her, she gave us food and warmth and didn't ask for anything back. That is safety. That is family." She paused, steadying herself. "Micah doesn't need a story about what might have been. He needs a bed, a bottle, and someone who shows up. That's me." The courtroom was silent. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Reeves, you claim paternity?" Mark rose. His voice was rough but steady. "Yes, Your Honor. I signed acknowledgement last night. I failed Lila for 17 years. I won't fail Micah. I will provide support and whatever stability I can. I'm not here to erase mistakes. I'm here to be present." The judge nodded. "Mrs. Hart, you've been named in the petition as a potential guardian." I stood. "Your Honor," I raised Caroline. "I failed her in some ways, but I tried. When she left, I lost my daughter. When Lila appeared on my porch with her baby starving, I swore I would not lose them too. I have resources. I have a safe home. Most of all, I have a promise, to stand beside them, not above them." The judge considered us all. Then she turned to Caroline. "Ms. Bennett, your daughter testified you told her grandmother was dead. Is that true?" Caroline hesitated, then lifted her chin. "I thought it was better that way." The judge's pen tapped once against the desk. "That answer concerns the court. Lying about family connections does not demonstrate stability." She looked at Lila. "Your child is thriving in your care since intervention?" "Yes, ma'am," Lila said, voice clear now. The judge shuffled papers, then set them aside. "The emergency petition for custody is denied. Primary custody remains with the mother, Ms. Lila Bennett. Mr. Reeves' acknowledgement of paternity is accepted and will be entered. Mrs. Hart may act as supporting guardian if needed. Visitation rights for Ms. Bennett are suspended pending further evaluation." The gavel came down with a single sharp crack. Court is adjourned. Lila sagged into the chair, her breath coming fast, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Micah stirred and let out a soft cry, and she kissed his hair. "We're okay," she whispered. "We're okay." Mark placed one hand lightly on her shoulder. "We're not done, but we're okay." I sat beside them, my hand covering both theirs. For the first time in decades, the word family didn't sound like a door closing. It sounded like a door opening. Back at Hart's Landing, the house welcomed us differently. The sun poured through the kitchen windows, touching the old wood table like it knew we needed blessing more than polish. Maria had baked bread while we were gone, the smell filled the air. We sat together, Lila feeding Micah, Mark buttering bread with shaking hands, me pouring tea. No speeches, no battles. Just the rhythm of ordinary life. And that, more than the gavel, told me we had survived. That night, I walked the porch alone. The stars burned clear above the pecan tree. I pressed my palm to the railing, whispering into the air. Spencer, it took 30 years, but the house has a family again. Inside, laughter bubbled, small, tentative, but real. I let it wash over me. Months later, the house no longer felt like a museum. Toys gathered in corners, laundry hummed in machines, the kitchen clock ticked again. Lila was working part-time with Havenwood Properties, helping stage houses for new families. Mark apprenticed with a carpenter in town, rebuilding the skill his own father had taught him. And me? I cooked more, prayed more, laughed more. The word grandmother no longer felt like a fantasy. One evening, we sat on the porch swing, Lila, Mark, Micah, and me. The baby clapped at the fireflies, fat fists catching nothing but air, his laughter rolling into the night. Lila leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't think safety could feel this ordinary, she said. That's the point, I told her. Extraordinary things are built on ordinary bricks. She nodded, eyes on her son. I'll never forget the bridge. But I don't live there anymore. Neither did I. So that's my story. If you've ever been told you were unwanted, if you've ever carried the weight of lies that made you feel small, hear this: safety, dignity, and family are possible. Even after decades. Even after betrayal. Would you have forgiven someone like Caroline? Or was I right to set boundaries once and for all? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because here, we believe that the best chapters can still be written, no matter your age.